Chat Ride Movie Review. Okay, so I finally got around to checking out the movie Big George Foreman. And I'm sort of familiar with George Foreman's story. Do not let nobody tell you otherwise. George Foreman is a top 10 heavyweight of all time. I mean, he was the Mike Tyson before Mike Tyson. He was knocking dudes out brutally. So knowing some of George's story, I had high hopes for this movie. And it did good. It did some bad. Okay, so they got your man Chris Davis as George Foreman. Now, we don't see Chris Davis in Atlanta, Black Messiah, and Space Jam. But this is a big one for him because he was leading in this one. And I'm going to say he did a pretty good job because he had to nail the essence of George Foreman. And you know, George is really like that big, gentle giant, but he can get angry at all times. And they really displayed that in this movie because George came up real po. You see that in the movie. He came up real po, and people used to pick on him. So that's where he got a lot of that aggression and anger from. Now, the positive from the movie, they show how quick George Foreman came up in the boxing world, which he did in real life. George Foreman had a power in boxing that they never seen before. And I like how they show how he was knocking dudes out. And when he beat Frazier, it shocked the world. Now, the negative of Big George Foreman, it was very cliche, very generic. To me, they didn't dive deep enough into George Foreman's story. I mean, if you're going to do a story about your life, go all the way there. I mean, it's certain things that just made George look like an all-around good guy and he don't have a dog side. Like, bro, you had, George got like 12 kids with like 6 different women. Bro, like, show the different relationships, how you got to that point. Like, George had to go through troubling times with money. They didn't really dive deep into that. Just George needed the money, he fought again, and everything was good. They could have dove deeper. Now, another positive, they did show how he became a champion again in his later career, which I liked that part. I wanted them to show that part of when he became an old man and he had to fight again. I mean, that is a great story. You feel me? Becoming a world heavyweight champion again at 45, it's crazy. But to be honest, after watching this movie, it's still a lot to be desired of the George Foreman story. I mean, bruh, they didn't even get into the George Foreman grill. I mean, that was big. You feel me? Like in the 90s, the George Foreman grill? Come on, man. But for what it is, it's a pretty good movie. It's worth checking out. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It's a good movie.